All right, 5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. It's kind of an overcast. Looks like it might even be drizzling out there this Friday morning, but it's Friday. So however it is, you give it one extra point just because it's Friday. And, of course, Jim George helps make the day a nicer, brighter day, too. Jim is in the studio. Jim helped build these studios.
Yes,
Right.
we did.
The wiring we're speaking through, right?
Correct.
The video we're doing and whatever else you put in here. So he's here to tell us what we can do to make sure that our homes are maybe not quite this wired, but somehow wired so that it suits our needs. And you've invited Kurt Kelly today. Good morning, Kurt. How you doing?
Larry, it's wonderful seeing you and being here this morning. It's been a while, but it's the first time here.
First time here. And
This is exciting.
This looks like the kind of table you might have been used to with the school board and with the other work you've done. And up in Tallahassee. Did you have a table like this?
Brother, this is a much friendlier table.
This is a friendlier table.
It's a much friendlier table. Yeah.
Politics is not a friendly game, huh?
It can be a blood sport. You bet.
So, Jim, are you conducting a political interview with Kurt today? What are you doing?
Well, Kurt was telling me about what he was doing now with children, and I thought it would be interesting to have the public know what is going on in Ocala and the greater Florida area. Excuse me, so I invited Kurt in.
All right.
Okay, good.
So what are you doing?
Well, it's interesting. As soon as right after when I ran for Congress, in that time we didn't quite get there. I was invited to be on a board from this area that deals with abused, abandoned, neglected children. And certainly when I was in the legislature, and obviously when I was on the school board, you deal with children a lot.
Right.
When I was in the legislature, that was one of the areas that I spent a lot of time in and trying to work in those areas. And so I sat on the Kids Central board. And then about 6 months ago, there was a change in Tallahassee, and we have an association of organizations that are very much like Kids Central all over the state of Florida, and they were looking for a new CEO and president of the organization, and they lost their mind and they went out and hired me.
This is where your heart of hearts is. I know, we know this about you.
Yeah.
For a while there, you were lobbying or something as a business, and that wasn't you.
Well, thank you. I still go to Tallahassee, and
Not that you wouldn't be good at it. Don't misunderstand me. But I mean, we know that in your heart of hearts, it's always been about the kids.
Well, and I actually do lobbying now. It's called white hat lobbying. In other words, we do a lot of work for organizations, whether it's Alzheimer's or children's and so forth. I still have that piece of the business model, but I spend the greater portion of my time being the CEO and president of this organization. It's called the Florida Coalition for Children. Florida Coalition for Children is all around the state. We have about 60 to 65 members of different organizations, large organizations. We work with our purpose is to provide the services. It is the privatized side. It is the part that both Lawton Childs, when he first started looking at this thing, we've got to get it out of DCF. We've got to get it out of the Department of Children and Family. We've got to get it into a service oriented that's more business and understand sort of business principles. And they came in and started this in '96, and then by '98, when Jeb got a hold of it, they just took it and went straight across the state. There was some issues initially to kind of roll this thing out, but now it's a mature model, and I've come in and we're taking it to different levels now and working to make sure that when children are in bad situations, that they have some place to go with foster parents and adoptions and all of those things, and so we work with that.
Is it a way to get relief, I can't think of a better word, but that's a good enough one. Let's say you're frustrated. There was a story yesterday or 2 days ago, a heartbreaking story about a baby that is now dead because the Department of Children and Families did what they were supposed to do. This is a good story about them because they said, don't put that baby in that home because the guy that this woman is married to is no good. He's got a bad background, right? They told the woman, they told the other relative, don't put the baby in it. She ignored what they had said, put the baby with her relative, and I guess the woman is fine, but she's not married to a good man, and now he's in jail for first-degree murder of this child.
Yeah, 21 months old.
So let me just use that as an example, not to really talk about that because it wouldn't be fair to you, obviously, but to use that as an example. Let's say I'm another relative, and I say, what are you doing? Why are you putting the baby there? You know this guy's no good. Oh, come on. He's all right. He's married to Louise, whatever the woman's name was, and Louise is good. She'll take care of the baby. All right, so let's see now. I'm at that point where I say, you know what? I got to call somebody. This is trouble waiting to happen. So I call the state agency, and you know what happens.
Right.
press 1 for this, press 2 for that, wait on hold for this, wait on hold for that, right? So do you provide the relief valve for that?
Well, it's really a two-part process, and that's important to understand the procedure and way it works. And I would think that as people are listening to this, that they would want to make sure that if they were aware of a circumstances, that there is a process. The word relief is maybe a little stronger than it. I don't know about relief, but there's a process which allows us to make sure that children are not put in harm's way. First of all, it's the state's responsibility, and always should be the state's responsibility, that if a child is in imminent danger, if they go into a situation and they see a child is in transparent danger, where they can tell that there's been abuse, the kid's been hit, there's serious problems, something of that nature, that the child is in an abusive situation, a life-threatening situation, they are required by law to remove that child out of there. Remove them to where is probably what you're asking.
Right.
That's where our organizations come in all across the state. In that situation, the Department of Children and Families would remove that child, and they would provide it to, actually, they would take that child and say, all right, they would partner with Kids Central in this area, and then Kids Central would make sure that, of course, the courts would say, take it here, put it in this area, give it to this family, and Kids Central would make sure that it gets there, that they get the resources there, that they have a caseworker that's actually working with that child. Now, there's really two hopes in this process. Number one is that we go back to that family and make sure that we're getting that dangerous situation resolved. That maybe in some cases there's some education, maybe some cases there's some law enforcement stuff that has to take place to make sure that they may be able to unify that child or reunite that child back with that family. Our goal is not to go out there and take kids out and put them over in some other family. We may have to do that. And in those egregious situations, you want to do that. You would prefer to put them back and unify them with that family or reunite them, but that environment has to be right. You don't want to reunite them in a situation that's equally dangerous. What happened in that particular case that you just mentioned is they did everything. DCF came in, they saw the problem.
Sounds like they did it all right.
They said they shouldn't have done this, and they went and the courts did it right, and they said, look, let's get it into this family. The folks from the care side, which is the side that I work on, they did it right. They went over and met with the child and met with the family and so forth.
Just such a shame.
But the family did a mistake, or that's what I read. I read the same thing that you read.
Right.
And the family may have made the mistake and went and allowed it to get back in that abusive situation. Hey, folks, there are bad people out there. There are folks that are going to abuse, abandon, and neglect children.
Right.
And the state says that as a good society, as a caring society, we're going to have a process that try to protect these children. And so that's the area that I work in. We're not on the DCF side, the Department of Children and Family side. We're not on that side. They've got their responsibility to make those decisions, to do the investigations, to decide whether that child should stay in that environment or should be removed out of that environment. Once they're removed, once that decision's made, then it comes to our side, the privatized side.
Right.
Let me just say something about the privatized side.
Yeah.
Florida was considered one of the worst states about 15 years ago in delivering services and providing services for adoptions, for foster cares. These kids would be taken out of a home, and they'd be bounced around.
Right.
That's just over
growing up in a foster after foster, right?
And just but 1 week you're here, next week you're here, and it's just they were being traumatized all over again every single time that happens.
Right.
We were considered one of the worst states in the nation. We came in and put this model in place. Again, the then Governor Lawton Childs in '96 said we needed to make a change. We need to do something, and he started it. Jeb came in and said, I agree, and he just took it and ran with it. And Florida went from worse to first in the nation now. We are considered one of the best of providing child welfare care for our children once they come out.
The one thing, and it's probably none of my business because it's a private enterprise, but how do you get paid? I mean, where does the money come from if it's not a taxpayer-funded thing?
It's absolutely not-for-profit organizations. They're private, but they're not corporate private. They're not for-profit organizations. They're not-for-profit organizations. The state says, listen, we're not going to have DCF do this, the Department of Children and Family do care, because the state doesn't do a good job of care.
So the state pays for it.
The state the money then comes down and goes back into it in some degrees. It didn't pay all of it. There's obviously this is the beautiful thing about a privatized model. They're allowed to go out there and do other fundraising, and you'll see golf tournaments and stuff. And
That's what I wondered.
And they
Yeah,
engage,
for sure.
and it's called community-based care, and versus what I would call bureaucracy-based control out of Tallahassee, which is what we know doesn't work.
Right.
We get our communities involved, and
Well, but being on both sides of it, though, just maybe some thoughts from you, because you've seen now both sides. Why doesn't it work when government does it? What is going wrong in the government that it can't do that same job that in the private sector, even if it is paid for with taxpayer money, partially? How could it be so different? Especially when the same caring people are involved in both organizations or both types of organizations.
I think it's probably a good philosophical question. If you go back to, let's just go back to the preamble for a second. One of the very first things to establish justice. The government itself, that's established through we the people and the folks that run the government side, really what they should do right is a just and fair society. They have the laws, they make the decisions. They're not, government in itself is, and our founding fathers, just read the Federalist Papers, they weren't really set up to be the caring element. You don't, and that's where I think when folks try to go and make government to be the end all to be all, it's not set up to be that. It's set up to be just. It's set up to be fair. It's set up to protect. To promote the general welfare is a promotion, but not provision of general welfare.
Good point.
And so the provision comes from us, from faith-based community, from our community, from folks that get involved in this thing. And so I think that this is a beautiful partnership with what the government does. Now, I believe, as a business owner, I believe in a for-profit concept. But when it comes to this type of care, I believe in a not-for-profit concept. And I believe that works. We're showing that it works. The evidence is overwhelming. The rest of the states are saying, look what Florida did. By the way, that does not mean that we're not going to have deaths of children, and it doesn't mean that all the bad people have gone. We have folks out there that are bad guys and bad actors. Some cases, they've done things out of frustration and hostility, but in many cases, a lot of these folks these children are in abusive and abandoned situations. Drugs and alcohol, particularly drugs, is one of the major causes.
And the background check that DCF did on this guy. And I'm just using him as an example, but I'm sure it's across the board. Let everybody know who needed to know that this guy should not have children in his home. Period. Right. And so really, I mean, you got to hand it to the folks who really made the decision not to let the child go there. It was one of those unfortunate things where like you say, the family made this poor decision.
And that man that committed the murder is going to be held responsible for murder. And so the state has a responsibility to prosecute him and put him away forever, as far as I'm concerned. It's anybody that would abuse and abandon children like that or neglect them like that. However, in many cases, the state comes in, they look at this, they see if this child's in a dangerous situation, remove that situation, see if they can change that dangerous situation to make it now a whole situation so we can bring the child and reunify them. You talk a lot of these children as they grow through this process. A lot of times they just want to be back with their families, and that's good. But what you'll also find is that many of these kids that are taken out of those abusive situations, they find new families, people who invest their lives in them, people who love them. And in many cases of our foster care families, one of the things we're finding now, we have some of the most incredible foster care families across the state. I get to work with them. I am so blessed with these people.
I want to, just real quick, let me reintroduce you, and then I have a question. I want the listeners to be able to call in, so make sure they know what's going on here. Former state representative Kurt Kelly is in the studio. We're honored to have him. Jim George invited Kurt to be here today. So I love the theme song, "Blinding Me with Science," and then Kurt Kelly walks in.
Yeah.
It was. I like the juxtaposition of that.
Exactly.
It's like David Letterman. Talking about about something serious. I guess. No, he does a good job with serious. But anyway, Kurt's here. If you have a question about what he's talking about and you want to be on the air, go ahead and call in. The number is is, as always, the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline, 622-9622. And what is the organization called?
Florida Coalition for Children.
Florida Coalition for Children. You're the CEO.
CEO and president.
How long have you been there?
Seems like 10 years now, but it's about 6 months.
6 months.
6 months.
So you mentioned that foster care in the state has been fixed. It was a big problem.
Fixed is a relative term. It's
Too soon? It's too soon to say fixed?
It's doing
Improved.
There's doing well. I'll tell you what. We're always looking for new foster families. One of the things that I go out and do. I speak to churches and organizations, saying, if you see these children and see in many cases what they're going through, and then to open up your home and treat them as your own and bring them in there in a safe and loving environment. What we find is, in many of these cases, is these moms and dads don't want to let these kids go, and they end up adopting them. And so
I bet that happens a lot.
It happens
yeah.
a lot. In fact, and in the right environment, that's what. Now, in some cases, they're just caretakers. They bring them in.
Right.
They love these kids. They give them a safe, wholesome environment. While that's happening, DCF and even us, our organizations, will go in and work with that family on parenting skills and some areas and help them. And especially, like I mentioned, about the drug and the alcohol abuse, and go in and get them services so that they can get their lives turned around. There are many success stories where their lives are turned around, and then we can take their children that's been in that safe environment and reunify them with that family again.
Does what you do encompass the juvenile offenders who have maybe a minor crime and they've been put on house arrest, but they don't have a house to go to? I've heard about these programs where maybe the home is not the best. They stole a candy bar, okay? They did something that requires them to be arrested because they broke the law. But the judge says, I don't want him in a facility. Can we, while he's waiting to go to court, have him stay in a home? And then some worker says, home's not the best place. So they have these other homes, right? Are they out there? And is that part of what you do?
That is exactly right. There's residential group homes. Let me tell you, one of the really good ones out there is the Florida Sheriff's Youth Ranch, where they'll have children that are in situations like that, and they'll provide these services for them. Listen, we're about taking children. By the way, children get put in bad situations of no cause of their own, and sometimes they're children. They make bad decisions. And we're about second chances in some of those areas and working with them and turning them around and turning them into good citizens. The cost for having a bad citizen is extraordinary to us. The financial cost, whether they're going to be incarcerated in jail or the fact that they're perpetrating crimes against our citizens. So the cost of having a bad citizen is very dangerous. Our founding fathers understood that. That's why we wanted to have a gentle and kind and caring community, a society. And so, if we can go in and have and we do have great organizations all across the state. That's another one of the blessings I get. In fact, I'm traveling over to Daytona today. I'll be in Miami next week. I'm in Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, all over the place, and I get to go and visit these places and see what they're doing for children. And it's not this nebulous concept of a child. It's an actual child that you're looking at. You look at them in the eyes and see that people are investing in them to both help them in a situation that might not even have been their fault, or a situation of something they have done wrong. Now, there is a juvenile justice system, and in that area, we do some work with some of our residential homes and so forth, and then there's a whole process in which that works on sort of a little bit different from our area. Mostly, we work with the kids that have been abused, abandoned, and neglected. And
would a runaway apply to that? You have
it depends.
A 16-year-old runaway.
It could, and it has many cases. And we're about making sure that children, first of all, safety and security, get them into a safe, loving, caring environment, and then making sure that we get them some services. Everything from, this is one of the bills I ran. The very first year I was in Tallahassee, I ran a piece of legislation for foster kids that have been taken out of their home. They're removed by the courts, by a DCF in the courts, out of their home, given into a foster care. All right, so let's use Marion County here. Let's say something happens and a child is at Saddlewood Elementary. They were there. Now they're moved out and they're put into a home that's just down the street, but it's in a different school district. Now they got to go over to Madison Street or something of that nature. Right? Now they're going to a different school. Their records wouldn't follow them. It would take forever. So that child would sit with no records. They wouldn't know exactly where to put them in the classroom and so
Right,
forth.
right.
So I ran a bill that said, listen, we've got to make sure that this is an expeditious process, and it's it's the school system working with the court system with all of these things, and so we ran a bill to make sure that all happened in a very sort of seamless process. You say, well, you don't need a bill for that. Well, actually, we did.
You did, apparently.
And it worked. And so it's those little things. And so what we do is we'll have on our side, we'll have an absolute case management worker. A child comes out, is placed into a home. We're right there now providing services for them, making sure that child is being taken care of, that child is being...
That's a perfect example of something, and this is kind of an aside, but it's a perfect example of something I've been saying forever, is that leaders should, well, first of all, common sense should dictate to leaders what should be done. You just expressed something that common sense says should have been done. There should not have been legislation necessary for that. But when leaders don't lead and they don't let common sense dictate what they should do, and instead they look at some book and say, well, we're not allowed to do that, then that's when legislators really do have to push a pen and say we need a law, because people are just not using common sense.
Or sometimes it's because policies that have been sort of implemented.
It's that book.
Yeah, it's that, whatever. It's that unspoken policy or rule, and you have to say that.
Robin and I had a book like that.
Is that right?
We threw it away.
You threw the book away?
We threw the book away.
It's because she could rewrite the book anytime you wanted. I know how that works. Robin doesn't need a book.
Well, anyway, I love what you're saying, and this is really you. I mean, after I'm sure the run for Congress was disappointing for you, but you know what? Ultimately, God, I know you're a God-loving man.
Yep.
And I know that God loves you, obviously.
Absolutely.
And clearly, he took you down that road for a reason, and I think this is it right here. I mean, you're glowing with this one.
Yeah.
I really don't think you looked happy with that other role. Did you like doing that?
No, I still.
Why?
Again, I still have.
I know, but it's for better things, I think.
Well, listen. Everybody, when you understand the way the governmental process works, and when you understand that everyone is deserved to have a person that can go in and properly.
But you look happier.
I do. I will. I freely admit that this is. I feel it a calling. It's tiring. I work a lot of hours, and I'm all over the state. But I was telling my wife the other day. I said, I just. It's amazing how the Lord has allowed me to. This is It's a ministry. It's a work.
Right.
It is heart wrenching, though. I'll tell you, we see a lot of sad stories.
How's your mom?
She's doing wonderful. In fact, just had lunch with her yesterday, and she just got back. She and my sister were in France. So.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, they get to go do that stuff. I'm
so jealous.
I'm traveling to Miami.
Well,
they go to France.
You see, Robin and I were stuck in this studio for 10 years.
Exactly.
And we said, finally, we're getting out.
Yeah.
And we just put right into another cage. Look at us, we're in another fish tank. From one fish tank to the next. We got to get to France sometime.
Let me say this. This is nice digs here, guys.
No, it's nice.
This is very nice. You are in the fish bowl. I can see on Saturdays and Sun. I mean, you're going to have everybody checking you out. This is great.
Yeah, we won't be here on Saturdays.
You won't? What's wrong with you? Are you not committed? I mean,
we threw the book away. Remember? We threw the book away.
I got that. And I want to say to the audience, Jim, just don't talk as much. Do me a favor.
It is Jim's show. Well, he's done this before. He had Nancy Stacy in here, and
you had Nancy Stacy here.
Yes.
But I'm the first here, right? Okay.
The first time.
Oh, not here. Yeah, I mean on his show he had Nancy.
That's good. Yeah. Well, all that. Well, how many years did we do We the People?
Gosh, at least 3, right?
Three,
maybe 4. I don't know.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I'd come in and mess up your radio station for 3 years.
I should have remembered what your music was called. I can't remember. Maybe it was called Kurt. Let me see.
Let's see. We'll see. But you really do amazing things, Kurt. And Jim, you yourself are a visionary to bring Kurt in, because we know that children are near and dear to your heart also.
Amen. Yep.
Always.
Yeah, Jim George has been a good friend for years. We went to
Wait,
church
you know what it
together.
says on the Kurt? You know what the Kurt card says?
What?
You want to hear it?
What it says?
All right, this is a patriotic message you did some time ago. Let's see if you still agree with yourself. This was 1 minute long.
All right, let's hear this.
I don't know how long ago you did this. This is a patriotic message from Kurt Kelly from who knows when. Here it is.
Our founding fathers understood. They stood against a philosophy of totalitarianism that came from a monarchy. We understood that we had individuals who had a belief system in owning of people. and there was war fought against this. There was a philosophy of totalitarianism that came from the ideas of imperialism and superiority that the Nazis tried to put out there. And there is a totalitarianism that comes from a religious zeal that only allows for their views. Isn't it interesting that this nation has always been the standard bearer against this totalitarianism? Therefore, we as a nation must stand because this philosophy is worth fighting for. I've gone into the history books to make sure that I don't have something coming in with some revisionist history that's teaching something different than what we believe. I honor the teachers that continue to teach the philosophies and ideas that made our nation great, and we have got to continue to teach those values.
Yeah, man, that was
Wow.
awesome. Now,
Jill.
I'm reminded now what that was.
That was a radio. I did a show.
That was not scripted.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just
You were a guest either on our show or on Hank's show. And I heard you say that,
Hanku.
and I remember hearing you say that and go, I got to remember where that is on the tape.
Yeah.
And
Very
I got to edit that out and somehow make it a piece because it needs to be heard more than once. So from what I just saw, I forgot all about it, but hearing it, I remember what that was. So.
Isn't that amazing?
So just so the listeners know, you weren't. I mean, you didn't script that. You didn't put the music behind it. You were just talking.
Yeah,
Is that right?
you're
Yeah,
wonderful.
I think I remember I think we were talking about the naming of and I think I was on the school board at that time. We were talking about the naming of Hammett Bowen.
Could be,
honoring
yeah.
honoring that was one of the movements there. So yeah, well,
Could be.
listen, that's sort of the heartthrob of and at the end of the day, that little phrase at the end of the preamble, it's securing the blessings of liberty to yourself and your posterity. That's what this is about with children. So
Yeah.
this is why it's just right up
Yeah,
my
man.
alley.
Well, I know, and I can see it in your face. I can
Thanks.
feel the vibe coming. Yeah. Jim, what a great show you just did.
Oh, thank you. Hey, I was just looking at your sign. We have to change it to add TV.
Oh, that's
Now
right.
It's FM, AM, and TV.
That's
There
right.
you
That's
go.
right. Maybe next week we'll learn more about science. Today we're learning about politics, political science, maybe. If you would. Kurt, good to see you. You look
Thank you,
great.
brother.
You look
Thank you.
great. Say hi to everybody we know and your
got
family.
it.
and
You got it.
Jim, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll take a little break. Clark Howard next
Yep.
with us.
Keeps going on.
When I'm dancing close to her.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Life jackets save lives. Wear it, Florida. More clouds and sun today with a shower and heavy thunderstorm around through the evening hours, the high 85 to 89. And mostly cloudy overnight, low 71 to 75. For tomorrow, intervals of clouds and sun with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm or two, high 88 to 92. And on Sunday, a mix of sun and clouds, still an afternoon thunderstorm around, high 89 to 93. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.